in per se, but the individual who's being abused could be, being addressed, to see there is a certain kind of reaction as they internalize the abuse as their own feelings. This is just from the research, but I want to hear from somebody who's been there before to actually say, well, this is what really is, because when you go online, there's a lot of information, and sometimes you ask yourself, well, someone researched, wrote a book, wrote a definition, but is it really what is written? This morning, I'm joined in by a warrior. I would call him a warrior, because as the world changes, we don't really say survivors or, victims. But if you may use those words, that's all right. But for this set, we call them the warriors. And Phil, we are so glad that you've come out and you're joining us on set today to actually share your story, what you have, come out to become, and to see you smile. And that's just really amazing. So welcome on set. Please tell us how you feel and just catch up with the viewer. Your camera right there as we begin this conversation.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. I'm honored to be in this room, to be in this, to be in this set, and to pretty much express the side of the masculine side of issues that affect us, in day-to-day lives, because very few people talk about it, and to have a wider perspective of a person who has exposed to such issues during his growth in life is pretty much something that I would look forward to. And I'm willing to answer all the questions that you're willing to ask.
And I like when you say that, and that is just to the viewer. He's willing to answer all the questions that you are willing to ask. Yesterday, Phil, we had a young man on set as well. His name is a storyteller, and we were talking about men's mental health. So just so you know, we are in the same light this morning. It's so good now to hear your side of the story, only that it is now about emotional abuse. Most people do not believe for an instant that a man would be emotionally abused. Let's just start with the societal, overview of how they view this, emotional abuse. Yes.
I am a subject of that, I would start from my background, when it comes to having a father figure, having a single parent, and going through that, and then losing your parents at a really young age, and then starting life at a very, young age. And I actually experienced a lot of emotional abuse, rejection, abandonment, lack of identity, and I would say I wouldn't be alive now. I am alive right now, so I picked a lot through the years, and I knew that I would live to this long to tell the story, to the world about what I've learned through the process.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that I've picked up during my journey, and I'm still on the journey. And why not share it? Why not share what I've been through? And for a better me, and it's made me a better self. So I have this slogan that says, or rather an analogy that says, pressure is what sharpens diamond.
Absolutely. And we are, of course, going to have an expert later on to just talk about the types of emotional abuse and, the professional side of it. But I want to hear from you what you have picked, from the experience you've had, because you're saying it's shaped you, and now you know how to relate better in relationships. Unlike other stories where we've had people say this, you've heard hurt people hurt others. But you're here saying, well, I was a subject, but now I've learned more positive ways to live my life. What are these things that you have picked?
Now, I come from a political background. My father was, in a political background. So a lot of things changed during the process. There was a change of class.
Yes.
After his death. I lived in both sides of the world, the Western world, and also here. So I learned, first of all, there was a culture shock, and then I had the change of class of different, then I had to pick up, then I had to learn how to be my own man. I had to be the man of my own. So at a very young age, I learned so much. So we're talking about class, we're talking about culture, and we're now talking about gender.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. When we're talking about, being your own man. A lot of men are watching this morning, and I can tell you for sure, there's fear of missing out. There is the pressure of, I have not reached this, and like you've said, people judge you in some sort of way. How did you become the man? You know, how did you, what were the steps you took? What grounded you in the journey of finding your own man, and what does it mean being your own man?
First of all, I had a very good mother. She was loving, supportive. She knew the fundamentals of how to raise a boy, and she gave me that strength. And that is like the most honorable thing that a man can have, is a supportive mother, because I feel that when we look at our parents, we both need both of them. So she taught me a lot of fundamentals while I was growing up. And after this, being a man is, the world taught me how to face the world. I went through a lot of relationships, breakdowns, and, you know, I had to build myself. I read a lot of books. You know, I read a lot of books every day. I'm an avid reader, and I believe in learning. And I talked to people. I had a lot of mentors. Most of my friends were elderly people, because where would I get all this knowledge? And it's because of the first part of my life raised by a parent who was rather focused, and she was very learned in her style. I learned a lot from her. If it wasn't for her strength, if it wasn't for my mother's strength, I don't think I'd have learned so much of how to respect women, because I respect women. I do not believe in male chauvinism, because when we are chauvinists, we actually kill a part of us. We're integral pattern, we're a puzzle that fits it all. So being a man is also realizing your feminine and your masculine side. You do not ignore the two, because we all emotional and we all tough. We all the both.
And I like when you tell men that we're all emotional and we're all tough. If you're watching from back at home, we are live on Facebook, and you want to hear your sentiments on the same as well. Our psychologist and counseling psychologist, as I mentioned earlier, is joining us shortly. But just to read a few feedback, people are joining us, and Edwin Kipkirui is saying, good morning, Anki. As always, you know, I'm loving the conversation. Thank you very much. Muyu Kariuki is saying, nimechelewa lakini nimefika. Thank you for creating time to be here with us. Now, among other things that we'll be talking about, even as we continue with this subject on emotional abuse, these are conversations that people, especially in Africa, are trying to not have. You know, these are conversations we should have, but it's like the society feels there's the need to talk about it, but nobody's ready to actually talk about it. So we'll actually look at the types of emotional abuse. You know, maybe you're being abused emotionally and you do not know it is a type of emotional abuse. We are now looking at, you know, the impacts of emotional abuse on the survivor, on the warrior. If you can relate with Phil's story, feel free to talk to him right here on Facebook. Reach us and let us know, what are you handling that he handled differently? How did he handle it? And what support would you need from our counseling psychologist, even as we continue? We'll also figure out, how do you identify the perpetrator? Because you're probably living with one, but you do not know that you're being abused, all right? So how do you go about it? How do you identify, you know, that you're being emotionally abused, that you are living or you are around an environment with a perpetrator? These are things that we're going to touch on, but first let me appreciate her for getting here on set. Karibu sana.
Asante.
So that they can hear your voice, allow me to do what people don't like us doing. Introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Wangare Mbogwa, and I'm a psychologist by training, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Wangari.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, Phil got here early and was looking forward to actually, you know, getting to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
So we have just heard a bit of his story, and I'm so honored that we are very young people on this set. These are conversations that are really affecting young people as we're speaking, pretty much this age group. But like Phil said, he got to talk to people more elderly. But we'll come back to you, Phil, and we're talking about the impact that this actually has on the survivor stroke the warrior. What are the types of emotional abuse, you know, professionally? from, you know, a psychologist's perspective?
Okay. So thank you for the question. This is a very interesting conversation because, unlike physical abuse, you can't really see it. You can't see the bruises per se of what, you know, the effects of what this does to a person. So there are different types of emotional abuse. The first thing that comes up is financial control. You know, if you find that your partner, and this can be your partner, your parent, your boss, you know, they want to control your finances, they control the kind of jobs you take. It's almost like they don't want you to be financially independent, they don't want you to have access to resources. That is a form of emotional abuse. There's also accusation in emotional abuse. A lot of, you know, being accused of cheating, accused of doing something fishy, say by your partner. There is invalidation. You know, if you're relating with someone who constantly invalidates you, your worth. Criticism, always criticizing, always saying, telling you this is, you know, you're not good enough, you're not beautiful, always picking on you. Those are the types of emotional abuse that people go through. There's a lot of withholding of affection.
Okay.
If someone refuses to show you affection, there's a lot of manipulation. It comes in all shapes and sizes, but the most common that I've seen is the most common patterns is there is accusation, there is verbal abuse, there is financial control, there is withholding of affection, and there's a lot of what's the word? There's a lot of, it's almost like your feelings don't matter. You don't matter in this relationship. There's always a power struggle. There's someone who's superior than the other in that relationship.
It's a power play.
There is a power play, yes.
And as we were speaking, we were talking with Phil here, and there's an aspect of gender that always comes up. He talked about, you know, finding his own man. And it's different how the society is viewing how women go through emotional abuse and how men go through emotional abuse. So I would ask you, you do counseling.
Yes, I do.
You meet a lot of these victims. I would ask you, who are then the culprits of emotional abuse? Do we have categories really?
As far as emotional abuse is concerned, it happens to both genders.
Yes.
But women tend to speak out more.
They tend to speak out more.
Yes, they tend to speak out more. They tend to seek for help, seek for therapy more often than men. It happens to men, but a lot of men don't label it as emotional abuse. For them, it's my girlfriend is crazy. You know, my wife is where? Moto ya kuotea mbali, usimkaribie huyo. You know, those kind of comments. It's not necessarily abuse per se, because men, again, they are very sensitive as far as their ego is concerned, so they don't really term it as that. It happens to both, unlike physical abuse, which happens to more women than men, of course, because men are stronger, they are more aggressive. But I tend, personally, I think it happens to more men than women. Personally.
Phil, she said something about it happens to both gender, but women speak more. You're writing a book, a biography, and you titled it The Lost Prince. This is where we come to now understand, you know, why you call it The Lost Prince, what this biography actually means to you, and at what point did you decide, you know, I'm going to write this biography, The Lost Prince?
Okay, so the biography is, it's tethered to my life story. A son of a powerful leader who happens to have a situation where he has several, and I'm not shy to talk about it, several wives, and my mother happened to be one of them. And while I was growing up, I didn't have any idea because I lived in America. So I didn't get to understand exactly what was going on until my mother died, and then later on, he died. So the Lost Prince starts his journey where he starts to find himself, raising two types of world, two called majorly another part of the world, but also here, and trying to find his root, and meeting up with all this confusion of who I am and not being accepted on this other side of the family, because they know me in face value. So the story about The Lost Prince is about me going through all this confusion, this journey, this rejection, and change of class and finding myself and trying to inspire the world with that story. Yeah.
So you're trying to inspire the world through that story. And I just want to use that, approach to ask the next question.
Okay.
How do you heal?
How do you heal?
How do you heal from emotional abuse? It is possible to heal.
It is.
Yes.
It is. Number one, I think the first thing that any person going through emotional abuse needs to acknowledge is that they are a victim. You need to understand that this is actually happening to you. Because the difference with emotional abuse and physical abuse is that it's easier to, you can easily say, "Mtu amenichapa," and this is enough reason for me to leave. But how do you tell someone that my husband is controlling the finances in our home? My husband doesn't want me to work in another county. It's easier for people to have a different opinion as far as the situation is concerned. But it's very important for you as a victim to acknowledge that I'm going through emotional abuse. Don't make excuses. Don't make excuses for that victim. I know as far as relationships are concerned, people do things differently. There's no one fit shoe for any relationship, and in this case, intimate relationship. But I think it's important to understand this is extreme. This is extreme criticism, this is extreme compromise, extreme financial control, extreme bending of this person, and you need to come to terms with that. Because a lot of victims excuse these things. So you need to make peace with that, then you need to seek for therapy. This is key. Because a lot of victims of emotional abuse have very weak boundaries. They don't know how to set boundaries. They don't know what this looks like. So for you to be able to do that, you may need to go for therapy.
Okay.
Number three, you also need to have very firm boundaries. And you need to grow in your assertive, grow in the assertiveness. You need to be someone who can set boundaries and consequences if those boundaries are violated. So I think those will be my three top. Make peace, seek for therapy, make boundaries.
And I want to narrow us down now to family.
Okay.
When you're talking about boundaries, you be firm with them. This is family. This is blood. And you're probably living with them. You probably have a narcissistic father or narcissistic mother.
Okay.
And I'm very concerned about having that boundary. How do you deal with that? I am dependent on this person. Okay. I look up to this person for comfort. I trust these people. I have trusted them. These are the only people I know. And from where you sit, because they're probably watching back at home. These children are watching. These young men are watching. When you talk of boundaries, they might not be able to pull that at this point in time. How does this particular individual deal with emotional abuse in that kind of situation in family setups? Yes.
That's the thing. A lot of people think I can't form boundaries because I'm depending on this person. But boundaries are not really external. They're more internal. It's not you necessarily saying I need to move out. It's also how your internal mechanism, how you emotionally, when this person is yelling at you, when this person is making accusation, are you engaging? In what ways are you responding that are enabling this behavior? So that's the first thing people need to understand. You're not as helpless as you think.
Okay.
And you can still set boundaries. There are people who are married to very narcissistic partners, but they've learned to live with that person. Why? Because they got to understood, not my monkey, no my business. They got to understand that this is something that I don't have control of. I can't control what this person says or how they treat me, but I can control how I engage and how I take that in.
Right.
So that's very key. Emotional boundary, being able to understand that I don't have to respond to everything they say. I don't have to prove to them, And number two, they also need to seek for support outside their circle. Seek for support outside your spouse, outside that parent. Have a safe space, somewhere where people who can hold you up and support you through this. Number three, I think it's also important for people to acknowledge that for you to be able to overcome emotional abuse or any abuse whatsoever, you need to look at how to become more financially independent.
Okay.
That's a huge thing. Be financially independent. At least work around something that will lead to you being financially independent of that person. It could be you going to school. It could be you taking a job that even you don't like, for as long as that will enforce or will propel you to leave sooner that home, or be separate yourself from that person.
All right, Phil, I want to come back to you. And so far, we're seeing a very long story of you battling different kind of, the types of emotional abuse that she's talking about. Just allow me to go deeper into detail, because it is your story that's actually making this conversation a positive thing this morning.
Okay.
At what point did you realize, now this is not any other kind of drama or craziness, this is actually me undergoing emotional abuse?
When I had friends of different degrees, I had friends from, most of my friends had a different lifestyle. They went back to their mothers, their parents, Christmases, happy Hanukkah, holidays, sure. And I was like, wait a minute, I must be different, because all these people ask me these questions, where'd he go? You don't have a home to go to. You don't have anybody, a mentor. I had to stick out, and everybody would keep reminding me. And I thought it was pretty normal, just as a human being. At some point, I thought I was an avatar. I know it's kind of hilarious. I was like, no, wait, this is a very, one of the unique type of situations that, really don't happen, where you come from really different, everything is so different, extremes. And it's something, because I'm highly spiritual, so something just hit me. And I was like, no, wait, you could have been sent to this world. You have to turn the negative to positive. There's two ways about it. The negative way or the positive way. And I chose the positive route. So I changed it into a positive. And I thought to myself, at this point where I'm answering your question, is at that point when I was actually now in my early adulthood, still in my adulthood, I was like, I'm in this world and I'm trying out relationships, and everyone is so different, and I thought maybe I need to get back into myself and view things from all perspectives. And that's when I thought, there's something to learn from it.
I am curious, and I really want to hear more of your story. When we started, you gave us a glimpse of your story, and I hope you're comfortable.
I'm very comfortable
with sharing with us, from the beginning. We know that
I'm at that point now where I'm ready. At some point, I wasn't ready. I was not sure about myself, but I accept myself. And so what if it looks bad or good? It's the reality.
And that, of course, I'm gonna throw that back to her, and then we come back to you. When he says, I'm ready to share my story, what does this actually mean to victims when now they are ready to share their story? Is progress?
It is.
Yes.
It is. Number one, I acknowledge, thank you for sharing your story with us. It takes a lot of guts, to actually share these things, and especially emotional abuse. Because I've had clients, I've worked with people who came to me because they thought they were crazy, and they just wanted to make sure, Sijachi's, I think I'm okay, and this is actually happening to me. But the same things they told me, they will not be able to echo the same to other people, to their parent or to their friends. They can't even, they can't even tell someone or share with their friends. My husband doesn't want me to work. They can't really share that because of the societal image that people have. The first question to Olizwa is he providing? So what's the issue?
All right.
Are you not lacking? Do you have food? Do you have a shelter? Are your children taken care of? So what's the issue? Job.
Sorry to interject.
Yes.
I had a parent who supported me financially but wasn't there. And that father figure is not, money is important. It's an important thing in society, but it's not everything.
I agree.
Sorry.
I agree.
No, I actually love that you added that right in the middle of that, so people would understand that you were there and you know what it means to be having a present parent. How many parents are watching this morning and maybe on their phones in their offices, and for sure, even with the CBC, you're not present. You don't ask your children, how are you today? What are you going through? Have you met someone new? This what we're talking about, being present. I want to come back to your story.
Yeah.
We're of course acknowledging and appreciating that.
Yeah.
And now you could walk us through,
Okay.
you know, your life overseas.
Yeah.
And coming back here and finding things are totally different.
Yeah.
Can you walk this journey with us?
Okay, so starting from the point, okay, my mother was a very, very passionate business person, and she traveled a lot. But her major base was in New York City, and partly when I was growing up, the big part of my life was in New York City. So I grew up, we used to visit back and forth. You know, we would go to South Africa, we'd go to UK, but mostly in New York City. So when I can talk about the difference in culture and the difference in ways of emotional abuse in the West, it's more acknowledged. You know, in Africa, it's actually coming up. When I look at history back in the time when we had the the villages and the fathers and
The clans.
it took a village to raise, but I'm still not a little old-fashioned in that. I'm very liberal in my thinking. I'm not structured to any way, but I pick what works. There was a father figure. There was a chief. There was the father, the man of the family who raises and who's there and present. But in the West, there's a lot of, well, you can have father figures, but it's not that strong, you know. You know, singlehood has been, everything is so when you look at that from both aspects of life and, growing up. So I grew up with my mother. She was a single parent, but we came back and forth. And she always instilled hope in me. I have no idea where she came from. She's like an angel, like basically. I talk to everybody about her strength. And if it wasn't for her and all the things she taught me, she spoke to me, she took me different places of the world, she inspired me. And she was open enough to allow me to express the deepest things about what's happening. Well, she built a trust between me and her, where I was not shy of talking about my relationships. If I had any, I was not shy. And that's what a parent should do. Allow you to express that integral part of you that you're not shy to talk about. So I grew up knowing that you can be expressive. And being a man does not mean you cannot express. So out of my experience through life, and I also read a lot about psychology because I was, trying to understand. I had psychologist friends. And I asked them questions about what's this and that, and I'll read books about it. And I started understanding, even through cultures and how different cultures in the world express themselves. But one thing that is missing in America is the father figure in the West. And now Africa is going that direction. It's going that direction. I don't know if it's the media or I don't know if it's the music, but it's just the way this society makes men. And if you look at the boy child, and I told you, it's about a domino effect. If the father is affected, the mother will be affected. So if you pass this along, it will affect the girl as much as the girls are getting empowered. Yeah.
All right.
I can go on.
I like that he likes to pick the positive side of it, and I appreciate that. And when we had a discussion earlier on, we figured that you like to say that we are all vulnerable at some area.
Yeah.
But we never like to admit or show it to look weak. And I want to hear from you. There's people who are, I would say, victims of emotional abuse, are probably wearing masks, all right, as we live with them and they're among us. If Phil wouldn't come out and talk about this, we wouldn't know. So how then do I, support a victim who needs help?
Okay, so this could be your friend,
Yes.
your sister, your colleague at work. So unlike physical abuse, again, it's not easy to identify this person is going through it. But in every abuse, there are always the telltale signs. You can always know. Number one, if there's drastic change in behavior. So if this person suddenly changes how they used to behave, changes the way they dress, changes how they speak, it could be that they are being abused. Especially if it's drastic. Especially if you've known this person, this is your sister. Suddenly, Anavanga, really nice dresses, suddenly she's covering her hair, she's not doing her makeup, she's just, That could be a telltale sign that something is off. Number 2, drastic weight loss. If someone suddenly changes, please ask. It could be that this person is being emotionally abused. If this person looks chronically tired, always tired, you know, if this person starts to socially withdraw,
All right.
you know, if this person changes how they speak to you, if they used to call you frequently or visit your place, if they stop doing it, or if they reduce in doing it, could be that this person is being isolated by whoever is abusing them. So that could be a telltale sign. You will always know poor performance at work.
Okay.
You know, reduced performance. If this person is suddenly, you know, this person as being very ambitious, suddenly they're not ambitious. If they suddenly quit their job and they can't explain it, you know, there are very key things that you can tell. You can tell that Philip likes working. Unajua, he's into business and suddenly he doesn't want anything. Someone who's influencing that decision. So please ask. If you feel like something might be up, it's always good to ask. And this is the thing. I've never had someone being offended at me asking, even in therapy.
I think it's the approach.
Not really the approach, it's the concern.
Okay.
To anyone who comes to see me, I always ask, and they're in a relationship, in your marriage, they'll do 2 things. They'll either laugh or they will start.
Wow.
All right. Okay.
Please
Go through either of these things. At one point in your life, were you isolated? Did you avoid, you know, the social groups? Did these things happen to you?
Yeah. Well, I've been isolated for many years, and that isolation brought a lot of insight. And I found myself, well, I'm an introvert, and sometimes I'm extroverted, but I'm introverted most of the time. And I lost trust of humanity. I lost trust because every time you know, not everyone is like you. Not everybody's like you, who has the awareness and understanding of exactly what's happening. So when you go to the world and you talk about these things, open up to people who are actually having wounds inside, right? The response is negative at most cases, judgmental. So you pull away and you become isolated. So I isolated myself for many years. And right now I'm pretty much introspective with who I am allowing. Like she talked about identifying abusers. And at this point I can identify, and even as relationships go, you know, I really know what to understand, where to pick. You know, and for most cases, isolation was a big thing for me. I really understood how to, you know, keep away from the type of company you keep, and it helped me. It's a positive isolation.
Okay.
Yes, a positive one.
So I think every time you speak, and the victims who are watching this morning are picking, that you could be going through this, but you need to learn to pick the positive, you know, aspect of it, because then you're going to tell me why it is important to keep your focus on the positive from a psychologist, professional point of view. But I also want Phil, when we come back, to tell us more about the book that he's, you know, working on. So let's just talk about, you know, keeping your focus on the positives, because it's working for Phil. Yeah, so the victims watching this morning, picking out the positives, and how can you actually do that in the middle of so much? It's so much pain, it's so much dilemma. I think emotional abuse, I think each of us have gone through it at some point, or going through it at some point, and you want to pick positives out of this. How do you even hack that through that journey?
Okay. So number 1, I think it's important for people to understand that pain is a very powerful tool. It matters what you do with your pain. If you don't transmit it, if you don't transform it, you will transmit it, right? So it's important for you to understand that even though I've gone through this emotional abuse, there's something positive about it. You know, probably you will come out, you know, being more assertive. You know, maybe you learn more about setting boundaries. Maybe it'll be a help to someone who has gone through it. But the key thing is to own your story. I like what Philip is doing. Own your story. This is what I went through. But be careful that you don't become a victim. I like using the term, you're a survivor. Yes, you are a survivor. You're not a victim. Because if you become a victim, you will always be a victim. But if you understand that I've survived abuse, that almost kind of gives you the power and the confidence to come out of it each and every day, because getting out of these things is not a one-time thing. One day therapy won't help you. It may take years. It may take years to just reaffirm yourself, to rewrite your story, to begin to edit your story. Your parents told you that you're nothing. You're just like your mom. You're just like your dad. You're useless. And for you to edit that may take a while. So it's important for you to just have that understanding that your life is very important, and it's your story. So share it, own it, and derive strength. Gain strength from your experience. And to be able to empower someone else.
And like you said earlier on, it's more internal.
It is.
I feel you are now on a book.
Yes.
Every day you are, how do you call this? Gaining back your power.
I'm gaining back my power.
What does this book mean to you? And why did you choose, writing? Because I'm told sometimes write it down. Write it down. They say this a lot from the counseling psychologists.
Well, when I started reading at a young age.
Yes.
I started reading, and this might sound extreme because I was always isolated. I would read about 10 books a week, And that sounds extreme, but it's possible. So I love reading, and I do poetry, and I actually write music. I found solace in the art, because I'm expressive. So I like art, I'm a creative. So I look into colors, I look into expression, and I tapped into, the other side of my brain. So when I started writing, let's get back to the question. When I started, what inspired me to write is because when I used to write little notes when I used to go to school, of how I feel, any ideas I had. So there's an age where I started, thinking about why can't I write this story? Why this story, and not to pepper my ego, but this story is really inspiring because everywhere I go, they're like, wow, you have been through a lot, and this is courage. Most of my friends who I knew who came from similar backgrounds, friends in quote, some committed suicide. They had everything. They had the parents, they had the financial support, but there was something missing. So I thought, why don't I write the story? Why should I, come into this world? What do I have to offer back to society? And this will inspire someone. And in the future, I'm looking to empower the youth. Looking to empower more people. I'm looking to empower both genders. I don't want to be one-sided. It has to be in the middle. I want to take that approach. I want to inspire everyone. Yeah, and that's my journey. Yeah, and also I had also forgot to mention. I talk to people every day, whether they're on the road. I like to speak to people. I feel people. I'm an empath. I feel people, and I see beyond what they just speak. Because language is, there's three ways of speaking: nonverbal, verbal, and also the action-based, where you communicate. So I learned how to communicate with people and understand what they're giving off.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I want to now understand from you.
Okay.
We most of the time say we are shaped by our experiences. Yeah. And like you're saying, all these things have built into this. I want to talk to people. I want to inspire people. This is now the field we are seeing. And I'm looking at how then guarding, now about the young children, how guarding the emotional growth of our child is important, because their parents could be abusing their children, because I wouldn't speak for Phil's parents, but maybe when they were doing the best they knew was good for him, they were actually putting him in that space. What would you say to parents who feel they're doing their best by giving you financial support, you have the best, you go to the best parks, you have the best toys, and they're hoping that they're shaping you emotionally by destroying you? Just talk about parenting. Okay. And emotional abuse.
This is a very interesting question, because in therapy, any counselor, any psychologist, when you go to therapy, have you been to therapy yourself?
I have been to therapy.
You have. Thank you. I have also been to therapy, and I believe you have. So I think therapy is wonderful. I really do. As a client, I think therapy is wonderful. So the most interesting bit about therapy is that your counselor will always ask about your childhood, because what you go through in your, we call them your formative stages, influences a lot how you relate as an adult. How you communicate was taught to you by someone. Your view of money was taught to you by someone. What you think about spirituality or God was taught to you by someone. So generally, life, your work ethic, everything, someone downloaded that software into your head, into your heart. So it's important for parents to realize that when you're having babies, you're not just having cute babies, and you're not having robots, you're having human beings, flesh and blood. And it was just yesterday I was having a conversation with someone, and I was just I was just sharing with the person, and I was remembering how, as a child, my dad used to be very intentional about covering my exercise books. Like, just before opening day, he would be very intentional. We would cover all my exercise books with the brown cover. It was almost an experience, and I love the smell of books because of that experience. And it's interesting that I don't remember the best sermon my dad preached, or the best gift he ever bought me. All I remember is that he did the small things, the things that mattered most to me as a kid. And it's important for parents to understand that you can't control your child. You really can't. You can pray, you can guide, but they're not robots. They don't have a remote at I want you to press and say this or behave like this. And parents need to exercise a lot of patience. And always, Aki, if you're not ready to have a child, please don't. If you don't like kids, please don't. Okay. This thing about shaming people about why don't you want kids, why can't you have kids, and the people are having kids they don't want, people are having kids they can't take care of. At the end of the day, it's almost like we are passing down generational trauma. Okay. People who are broken having kids and breaking kids. These kids are innocent. They didn't choose to be here. So if you have a child, please take it as a responsibility. And your responsibility is not to have them be a doctor. Your responsibility is not to live your dream through them. Your responsibility is to parent them into becoming happy, healthy, responsible parents. Okay. If you can do that, I think we'll have a lot more healthy people. This thing about my mom was a narcissist, I'm a narcissist, or I got married to a narcissist, so it needs to stop. Because we are teaching our kids very weird things about relationships, and they're getting hurt. People are committing suicide, people are stuck in relationships, people are finding validations in the wrong places, especially because of the kind of things we say and how we treat them.
All right. And I want to appreciate that you have actually made that very clear. They usually say that we'd better raise happy children than spend years healing broken adults.
I agree.
Yeah? So we're breaking them from the inside. So when they grow up, they have to do a lot of healing. And that has to be done by someone else, their spouse, their boss. And now the entire society is broken. So parents watching this morning, we're talking about emotional abuse, and you could be doing the best you think you could with what you know. How about you sit in places like this, in conversations like this, listen to people like Phil, who now say, well, this approach got me here. You probably want to rethink the approach. Phil, let's talk about social media. Okay. And right now, it's I think the greatest, I don't know, perpetrator of emotional abuse.
Exactly.
Have you gone through it? Is it part of your journey? And what would you say as a young person, now that you're also an author, on how the power of words on social media breaks people, and especially men? As we wrap up, I'll come in for your last, of course, remarks. Yes.
Well, social media is a very powerful tool. It's a powerful tool because people, if you realize over the decade, people have been expressive through the WhatsApp, through the Twitter, to Instagram, mostly Instagram and Facebook. I feel that we can utilize this media and try. There's also empowerment groups in the media. It's like a world where you have the craziest of the craziest, the positive, all kind of. But there's a world inside media. Now, as a child or anybody out there who's growing up, we cannot tell our kids, hey, you cannot go on Facebook. You can teach them about the values. You can tell them the truth about really what is happening. Because there are positive things in media and there are negative things. And people, I've noticed that some people would, the trolls, that people would just go into the media and just express themselves. People kill themselves. A lot of
they
things.
write notes
Write notes.
Yeah, and then you go saying RIP after they're gone. But actually left there, and people say, well, you can do it if you want to. Yeah, and they're going through emotional abuse. I'm sorry to interject.
No,
but
it's
you-
okay.
Yeah, but you say that is actually happening.
It's happening. So the media, I've seen a lot of things happening. And when I'm on the media, because I'm very selective when I'm on media, I choose to not go to sites that because I know from a psychological point of view that sometimes what you see, especially when you're, our phones are the olds around here, and we get idle, and sometimes it's just scrolling. You want to see this, you want to see that. So you have to control yourself and what you are and where you're going, because you can easily get tapped into another realm.
Okay.
And I avoid going to places that are not part of curiosity, because you know that if you're going through the alley, you know what to expect. You can see that.
Yeah. So choose what to feed your mind to protect your emotions and to help you heal and grow out of it.
And have the insight.
And have the insight.
Yeah, the insight is more important. You don't have to go through it. You don't have to suffer, but you can understand it from somebody's perspective. My book is, a part of that. Like, I don't want you to go through it. I want you to learn through it. You don't have to go through it.
Now you have actually given us a different perspective where everyone writes a caption on their photos, go through what you're going through. You don't have to go through it. Give us your last remarks, and Phil, we want to appreciate you so much. Please launch your book here. Let us create awareness about it, because the world needs that.
The world needs that.
So congratulations. I'm going to read this, and I say congratulations. You're such a warrior.
It's really obliged.
Kate Kyoko says, good morning, team. Proud of you, Phil. A real warrior you are. And she says, amazing team. Let's close from your professional, angle on emotional abuse. I have a minute or so to go. Okay. And you can speak to that camera right there as well.
Sasa, thank you so much for having me. I'll say this. If you're going through emotional abuse, please seek help. Don't pass it on to someone else. If your parent abused you, please don't do it to your child. I think we need to normalize healing. I think we need to normalize taking responsibility of our own emotional, psychological health and purpose to be different. I always purpose to do better than my parents did. They're not failures, but I think I'll do better. I think I've learned from their mistakes. And this is the thing, parents. You may be doing your best, but I want you to understand that you cannot caution your child from, the dangers of this world. This world is rough. And your child will go through very trying times. They may be abused by someone else. They may be bullied. But please let it not be you. Let your children not have to heal from you. They can heal from their toxic boss. They can heal from their bad friend in nursery school, but not you. Please try your best. You're not perfect, but you can do better.
You're not perfect, but you can do better. I am so glad you were part of the panel. I am so glad we had a candid, soft, calm conversation. Did you feel that?
I feel it.
If you felt it from back at home, please leave us your feedback and let us know if this impacted you. I can see my camera person smiling through it. Edu, let us also know where you're watching us from. And please, don't let anyone whatsoever heal from you. I hear people say my ex, is that, my ex is this, and people are asked random questions, what do you wish your ex? And they say, well, maybe he's knocked down by a train. Maybe she is, having 10 children, not working at all. Please, let no one have to heal from you. Keep the conversation going, share the link, and let's hear from you. Good morning. This is The Morning Drift. We come back with the Aspirant Forum. One-stop shop for all your beauty and cosmetic brands. Come shop with us and grab a variety of products and enjoy our competitive wholesale and retail prices. Our branches are in Nairobi, along Naivasha Road, Rivonia House in Kawangware. We are also located in Meru
along Mikinduri Road, Meru Town. Call us on 0726 279551 or 0757 671075. Ideala, let's make you stand out.
The future of money is simple, like unlocking possibilities with a smile and having the world in the palm of your hand. It's the ability to touch many